how did you get started on the conversation with the fence, which seemed to be a continuing conversation over the years?
Well, I got started when I took my son down to meet him in the Oval Office, and Richard said, Dad and I were building, he read in the U.S. News that the president liked to build a fence on his ranch. And so Richard says, well, Dad and I were building a fence on the farm yesterday, and we could use your help, sort of in jest. And the president then launches into his description of how he built fence out of old telephone poles. And then I was flying out with him for something in Stark County, and I asked him about it, and then I got those pictures the next day and said, Doug, these out of the photo file. He really was into this fence building, and you can see it. He was doing it himself. And you get out to his ranch, he's got probably 1,500 feet of it.
And when did he handwrite the letter and the drawings?
Well, I wrote to him and said, now, after he sent me the pictures, I wrote him a note and said, I'm going to get the poles. I said, I got the poles, because I'd called a phone company. And then I got the handwritten letter. I don't know if it's dated or not, but the handwritten letter that you see there, saying here's how to do it. And his staff person said they when they got my note, they said to him, well, let the foreman out at the ranch describe. He wanted to do it himself. And he went to a lot of trouble to write that letter and make all those sketches.
Yeah.
And then I built the fence, and I sent him a picture of it. And I got another letter. Dear Ralph, sorry I couldn't be there to help you. Keep me posted, no pun intended. And then he put a postscript, you have graduated summa cum laude. He was just a great human being, that's all. I don't know how else to describe him. When he was still in the White House, and I visited his ranch, and sure enough, he had one on his fence. So he took it home and to the ranch and put it on the fence just like I have here. I miss him, being able to drop him a note, and if I were in California, I'd stop to visit him. But just really a good guy.
You think he was the greatest president in your lifetime?
Well, that's pretty strong. I mean, he was good. Each had strengths in their own way. And I think I would be reluctant to pick out any one as the greatest, even in the 7 that I knew, because they had different things that they were able to cope with and deal with. So they were. You could look back over their careers and point out to some strengths and weaknesses. I found that presidents differed. I knew all of them. George Bush, well, there's a picture over there you say of George Bush and I planting a tree on the White House lawn. And Nixon, I didn't get to know Nixon very well because I came in with him in his second term. And Nixon was not an easy guy to know. He was smart. He was a very smart person, but he wasn't smart enough to stay out of that Watergate mess. And Jimmy Carter was kind of an odd duck in a sense. He wasn't easy to know. Rosalind was out here to dedicate the First Lady's Library, the McKinley or Saxon House, and she said, would you help me? I want to get the Carter Farm in the park, national parks. I said, well, I'll try. And of course I was chairman of the committee then, so I just put $2 million in the bill to restore the Carter farm, and which they did. And then Rosalind called me and said, "Would like you to come down and dedicate the farm," which I did. Mary and I went to the Plains. The odd thing is that here's the president. Now he was, of course, out of office by then, but none of his cabinet people showed up, and this was a pretty big deal for him, you know. But I don't think there was any warmth between Carter and people around him, and even I sensed it just wasn't a real outgoing, warm personality. Bill Clinton, of course, he was a little too warm, and got himself in a little trouble. But George H.W. Bush, I liked him. I think he made one big mistake. He said, "Read my lips." And then he signed on a tax bill. You don't do that. In fact, they called me the night before the House was to vote, his chief of staff, and said, "Well, how are you going to vote tomorrow?" I said, "I'm going to vote against the bill. We took a position of no new taxes." Well, he said, "Don't expect to ever get into the White House anymore." You know, he was kind of nasty about it. So, well, so be it. And then I did vote against the bill. But I fixed him. They took away my tickets to the White House, or to the Kennedy Center that night when I had some guests, so I went to Ticketron and got tickets to take them. And I called his secretary, Mrs. Bush's secretary, whom I knew pretty well, and I told her what happened, and by 9 o'clock the next morning, I get a call from President Bush, and he says, "Ralph, I'm sorry about what happened last night, that they took your tickets away," because I knew she would tell him. And it wasn't very long, in a couple, or maybe 2 or 3 months, that the guy who did this was gone from the White House. Anyway, he was a good guy, but he made the mistake and said, "Read my lips, no new taxes," and then got conned by the Democrats into signing on to a bill for new taxes. George W., his son, was, I agreed with him on some things and others I didn't. Clinton was a hail fellow well met. He was, he was just a guy that was jolly. People liked him pretty well. Now, I didn't get to know. I left when Obama got there, so I never got to know him. But presidents are human beings, as I found out very early on.